people will be well placed to handle it.
Good. OK. Now moving on, there is some optimism in the meat industry, it seems. Silver Fern Farms chairman Ian Garden, he was sounding bullish when he announced its annual result. In an article in the press, he's reported as saying the company's strength and balance sheet will allow it to give a lead in the industry. Do you think that's the case, Tony? Silver Fern Farms, they've been through a pretty rough patch, haven't they?
Look, the red meat industry is one that I continue to be very, very optimistic around. You know, we see the lamb price, you know, for our product on the shelf in the UK at record prices. You know, the frustrating challenge, I think, for the industry as a whole is why not more of that is being returned to farmer hands. You know, I don't believe for a second that, I guess, consolidation with the industry, which has been a talking point, you know, for quite a couple of years now, I don't think that in itself is going to be a silver bullet, but I do think we need to understand, you know, what's the volume of lambs that we are producing each year, you know, and what is an efficient processing chain that we can look at. And we spoke earlier in the, you know, in the conversation around coordination overseas. I think there will be pressure on the meat companies this year with those lower number of lambs. And I think the industry itself needs to take a leadership position around understanding what success looks like from a future point and work in a coordinated manner or a cohesive manner to be able to work towards it. That's what I'm hearing from farmers that they want to see. They want to see leadership.
Right. Silver Fern Farms, its proposal or its suggestion to Alliance that there be some linkage, that didn't seem to gain much traction whatsoever, even amongst farmers this time round. Do you think there's been a change there in the attitude of farmers? Or do they still want this sort of collaboration that they've talked about for so long?
I think farmers just want to see a better price at the farm gate, and I don't know that they're necessarily too worried about how it comes about. And I think what Tony was saying before is really valid about really understanding the supply chain and where is the leakage. That's one thing that I guess I don't have an answer for, because like Tony, I've been overseas, I've seen our lamb prices in overseas countries, and they're spectacular. Why aren't we getting it back here? And to date, nobody has been able to answer that question to me. So there has to be some leakage in that supply chain. Right.
I do think farmers are very sensitive to any sort of fragmenting around trying to bring the industry to a common view. And I think, you know, part of the piece around the Silver Fern Farms piece from a farmer's perspective may have been, you know, a little bit of concern that, you know, we were starting to see some divergence as opposed to, I guess, some convergence of views. And I think that does prey on farmers' minds, especially after the MEAG, you know, the MEAG situation when the industry was talking about consolidation last time.
Right. Well, moving on to another meat company, this time in the North Island, AFCO. Rowan Ogg from there, he's taken issue with Labour MP Damien O'Connor's assertion that privatising meat inspection will put farmers in the meat industry at risk. This is a bit of scaremongering, isn't it, from a politician? I think,
Glenys, the way that we sell ourselves and our product overseas is one where we produce efficient, not low cost, but efficient. I mean, there are other people who can do it in most of our product areas these days, lower cost than us, but efficient and high quality food. We have to be able to provide offshore markets assurance around both within farm gate animal practices and animal husbandry, as well as in the processing space. You know, I think the question of whether it's privatisation or not, I think has to come secondary to being able to provide ourselves assurance that whatever we're doing within a processing space is actually something which is materially good for the sale of our products. So it helps our proposition in terms of what we're selling. I think if we create any opportunity for questioning that, then I think, you know, we need to rethink the situation.
Right, you'd agree with that,
absolutely,
would you, Mandy? Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. It's about making sure that our customers know that what they're going to get is a quality product and there's going to be no food issues surrounding it. And I think it's immaterial how we do that, so long as that our customers are 100% satisfied.
Right. OK, well, next subject. Federated Farmers is congratulating Environment Canterbury Commissioners for capping rates for 2011 at the same level as for this year. Any chance of this happening around the country, Mandy? Farmers would be delighted, wouldn't they?
Farmers would be absolutely delighted. Can I see it happening around the country? I'm not so sure about that. I would like to see it happen, but I think there's too much pressure at local government levels for for money, for capital, to allow a lot of them to do it. That would be my gut feeling, although I'd love to see it happen.
Right. Well, moving on, our last subject. Wool partners say they're almost there in terms of getting the financial support from wool growers they need. What's the initiative likely to deliver, Tony? It's well-intentioned, isn't it?
It is well-intentioned, but look, wool is, I wouldn't say wool has fallen off the table, but, realistically, from a return point of view, the wool clip has added, unfortunately, very little to farmers, for a number of years now. I think the opportunity for wool partners is to get cohesion behind the wool industry. It was only last week I was hosting a delegation from China. It was the Agricultural Development Bank of China, which are huge players in China post-farm gate in the distribution space, and they were down here specifically to look at what is going on within our wool industry. They have a growing demand for wool, and they are concerned that from a New Zealand perspective, that with the lower lamb numbers and sheep numbers that we're seeing here, that there may be some pressure on our ability to be able to produce wool. I think the wool partners opportunity is one where we can again highlight the fact that from a sheep we get at least two, or should get at least two good sources of income: the meat off the lambs and also the wool off the sheep's back.
Well, we'll be hopeful that's the case. After the break, we heap the praise or dish our displeasure in You Beauty or a Bollocking. See which way the awards fall when we come back. Now it's on to You Beauty, praise or a bollocking, the opposite. What do you have for us this week, Tony?
Two quick You Beauties.
That's good to hear.
The first was down in the Bay of Plenty last week, Thursday, Friday, just an acknowledgement that industry dealing with the PSA issue has done a hell of a job, both at a Zespri level, at a packing level, but also on the ground, MAF and government. There's been a lot of coordination in terms of dealing with that issue, so that's a great job. The second one is we have the Ahu Whenua Excellence in Maori Farming competition kicking off. Entries closed January 28, 2011, and we'll just ask anybody out there who's interested in what's going on in Maori farming to be able to get along to the field days that we'll be running next year. Yeah,
I know certainly last year I got along to one of the dairying field days, and very well attended event, and their top properties that are seen.
They absolutely are.
Yeah. Just getting back to the kiwi fruit side of things, do you think that the speed at which moves were made was rapid enough? There seemed to be just a bit of shell shock to begin with in the very initial stages, didn't there?
I think there's, when you're dealing with a situation where you don't actually know the full circumstances and fact of what you're dealing with, I think there is, a period of, trepidation and questioning. However, what I would say from both an observation view and having spoken to the people down there now firsthand and had a look at some of the orchards, quick reaction time and having almost, I guess, like a bit of a crisis plan now. Zespri may have had to develop one, but other industries or other agricultural segments should be able to have a look at that industry and see what best practice looks like.
Yeah, that sounds a good idea, doesn't it, Mandy? Yes. Other industries, they wouldn't have much by way of these sort of plans in action. For example, with pastoral industries, sort of an action plan if there was an outbreak of foot and mouth disease.
Actually,
absolute worst case scenario.
No, I think that MAF have got that pretty much under control. I've certainly in the past done a number of scenarios looking at something like that, so I think there is a template there. I don't think that anything takes away from actual experience, though, and that's probably what the other industries need to look at from the kiwi fruits perspective.
Yeah, so they can make some use of what's been a very unfortunate situation in the kiwi fruit side of things.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Mandy, I believe you might have a couple of beauties as well this week.
Absolutely, Glenys. Bailey Lovett was on TV last night with the work that she's been doing with shellfish and contamination. She's won the Prime Minister's Young Scientist Award, amongst other credits, and I think that's fantastic for a 17-year-old to get out there and to be doing that work off her own bat is fantastic, and it bodes well for our country. The other award that I want to give is actually Dairy NZ for getting out there at the moment and putting a release out through the email telling farmers what to do to be prepared in case the dry does come. So I've been pretty critical in the past, but this time they deserve the bouquet.
They're absolutely on the front foot.
They're on the ball this time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I know that all Waikato farmers and farmers around the country are just crossing their fingers and absolutely hoping they're not going to see the same scenario as has been played out in recent seasons. But what sort of shape are they in to front up to that? Have they got a reasonable amount of supplementary feed available to them?
No, that's actually probably the biggest concern, Glenys, is that we're seeing spot price for palm kernel jumping on a daily basis. Grass silage at the moment is in excess of $110 a bale, or 60 cents a kilogram of dry matter. Very few farmers have actually got supplements on hand. A lot of the crops that they would normally put in have not yet germinated. So I think that farmers are in quite a precarious position if we don't get rain in the next couple of weeks.
Right. Is that what you're seeing around the traps as well, Tony?
Yeah, look, I would agree. You know, tough spring, there's not a lot of extra feed on hand that's been stored away. You know, we do need to see water, and we go back to those early comments that, you know, people sitting around the kitchen table thinking about some scenarios that if, you know, we don't see that rain come through through December and through the summer period, you know, what actions they're going to take, because actions taken early are always better actions than actions left late.
Right.
Absolutely.
So the key message to farmers would be consult your advisors, get up-to-date information, and if you've got to make a hard decision, make it sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
And make an informed decision, Glenys. I think that's the most important thing, is not to jump off half-cocked, but actually to get the good advice about what decisions you should be making, because every farm is different. And one thing, I guess, a plug for the Rural Support Trust is that we are there to help people if they do need a hand making decisions or some support through it, because farmer resilience, I think, is always going to be the biggest concern. After coming through a crappy spring, a drought last year, it is my biggest concern about farmer resilience.
Right, so the Rural Support Trust, it's ramping up its activities already, is it?
Absolutely.
In preparedness?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a drought committee meeting on the 8th of December to be discussing, you know, whether we are in drought at that stage or not, and what efforts will be put in place. Meeting will have already led with a drought shout starting tomorrow in the King Country. So there is already some moves to be taken, but I think it's probably still a bit early to be starting to talk about drought, mainly because of the reaction that it does give to farmers. So we need to be very wary of that.
Good to be prepared. Yeah. Well, I have a you beauty for Shireen Helps and her husband Francis. They're Banks Peninsula farmers whose work protecting penguins at Flea Bay has won them a Canterbury Conservation Award. I've been lucky enough to visit this property twice, and it's a great example of farmers putting a priority on environmental protection. But I have a bollocking too. A report from the horticulture industry showing exporters face $235 million in tariffs, $34,000 for each grower, which is up $6,000 in just 2 years. That's a huge burden on an exciting go-ahead industry. That's all we have time for this week. Thanks to my guests, Rural Support Trust consultant Mandi McLeod and BNZ Head of Agribusiness Tony Arthur. And thanks to you for watching. Please email your comments to country99tv.co.nz. Check out my blog there, and we'll catch you next time.